Is it near a casino? Is it, you know what I mean? What made you buy those short-term rentals, or what would you look for? Or what should the audience look for in a short-term rental?
Totally. Okay. And again, it all goes back to what your goal is. If the end goal is just making money, or do you also want to use it for your family?
Okay. Like to use it as in you got a Lake Tahoe, guys. Lake Tahoe's beautiful. You got a Lake Tahoe, but you're also using it as a short-term rental to offset your costs. And these are $2 million properties or whatever, $1 million. And you're using it as your family every other weekend.
Yeah,
correct?
Exactly.
Okay.
So it depends on what your goal is.
Okay. Let's say it's investment, strictly investment. What would you do?
And at that point, if you're listening to this in the Bay Area, good luck. You should invest somewhere else. So you have to go out of the area now at this point.
Sure.
And
soon we'll be short-term renting 600 square feet in like these little huts they're building. But
the tiny home.
Yeah, the tiny home with Elon Musk's little poster board on the wall. But let's say out of the Bay Area, let's say somewhere someone could afford, such as Ohio, maybe in the middle of nowhere somewhere else. Or maybe even outside of Tahoe. I don't know if you know, like Lake Tahoe's gorgeous, one of my favorite places. My dream is to have a place there, but I almost did during COVID. But let's say if you go like 40 minutes outside of Lake Tahoe, you can actually get a really nice cabin.
Yeah.
You're not on the lake, but let's say, what would you recommend? What are the people looking for?
All right. So if you are looking for your first short-term rental, this is the easiest thing to do. This is not sponsored, by the way. But there's two websites. You can go to data.rabu.com or airdna.co.
Okay.
And from there, it'll pull in all the Airbnbs or VRBOs in the area, and then you can aggregate the data and say, hey, I'm only looking at 4-bedroom houses in Lake Tahoe.
Wow.
And it'll pull in all the rentals, and it'll also pull in what the gross bookings were historically from each of those listings.
For the year? Or
for the year. Or for the, and it'll do by seasonality,
do whatever
too.
you want. Wow, by season, by
and of
holidays.
Course, the more data you want, then you got to start paying for the...
I see.
And then from there, you just say, cool, this house could generate $120,000 gross per year. What are my monthly expenses? 9 times out of 10, if your monthly expenses, including the mortgage, are less than 50%, you should probably buy that deal.
Interesting.
There's a lot more, this is not financial advice, but that's where I would start.
By the way, guys, not financial advice. There's already on our YouTube a disclaimer, but this is experience, and you do your own research. Your short-term rentals, do you use them sometimes, or is it just investment?
We have used one.
Okay. With your family?
Yes. Okay. And that's also because we used a second home loan.
Okay.
So you can, if you intend to use it. No.
Oh, you can't?
I don't have a primary home. I still rent here in the Bay Area. Because again, I don't want to pay. Now it's $10,000, $12,000 a month.
Yeah. You're saying, why am I paying this interest, basically interest, up in the beginning is mostly all interest, especially in that curvature of the 30-year mortgage.
Yeah.
And you're like, hey, I'll just take it and invest and let them pay off my future house in the future or whatever.
The cash flow then pays for my rent.
Yeah.
So,
or your mortgage in the future if you get to that level or whatever it is.
Yes. Although I don't know. At this point, eventually I'll have a nice house in the hills where you buy that, but that'll be when you have stupid money.
So we're gonna have to talk about why you feel renting is better. But continue with the short-term rental. Okay. You have used it once. My thing is with the short-term rentals, and people are like, well, why don't you just buy a place in Tahoe? It'll help you get the loan because you could show short-term income or even any income. Can you show short-term income?
You have to have it for 2 years.
2 years.
So you have to have it for 2 years for it to then apply onto your income to then increase. But
there actually, technically, yes, with a big term lender. But there are lenders out there that will go around that if you get a new renting contract. There are some private lenders.
Yes, or you can do a DSCR loan, and then there are some off of Airbnb income too.
Yeah. They'll get creative. Yeah. They get creative. There are. We should note to the audience, the Chase or whoever is out there, they're going to say, hey, 2 years, get it out of here. We're not going to give you this jumbo loan or whatever. But for me, I've never been the type of guy, like they would, if you rent a place, just like if you let a buddy drive your Mustang. He's going to try to push that car or Porsche. He's going to whip it around the corner. There are people that come into your short-term rentals. I'm sure they damage it. Yes, there's protection, right, with Airbnbs.
And air cover on Airbnb is great, by the way.
So you had to have you filed claims with them before?
Multiple times.
And it's been covered with the repair build and you toilet, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Really? Okay, good. So do you think, this is you giving advice to me now.
Okay.
And I haven't given you advice, but I'm curious for this advice. Would a short-term rental, say in Lake Tahoe, be a good idea, knowing that there's Airbnb coverage? And I would buy it, I'd short-term rent it. I know they're going to damage it. It's inevitable, right? It's like a 12-year-old driving, or 16-year-old driving a car, 12-year-old. 16-year-old driving a car. They're going to scratch it. They're going to hit the pole coming around the corner one day or whatever. Do you think it's a smart investment long-term for saying, hey, the person's going to damage this home. They're going to scratch up my floor. They're going to break the bathrooms. They're going to do this. I could file one big claim, or you can't file a one big claim. You can. Doesn't this kind of give you that house eventually that you want, right? You get what I'm getting to, right?
So here's why for you, you might consider it. And obviously, if you own this building, then you have a significant amount of income.
Yeah.
But there's not many different ways that you can offset a high income.
Yeah.
If you bought a long-term rental, you can't offset your active income with that long-term rental income. Even if it has property depreciation, you're keeping that in there for a passive gain to offset.
Yep.
Right? But on a short-term rental basis, it's now a hospitality business.
Interesting.
And so, for example, let's just say, and we're going to get a little deep here, but this is just for you. So I'll keep it super summary.
No, I appreciate it.
Have you ever done a cost segregation study before?
I have not.
Okay, so, and you actually have a commercial property, so you might be able to do it with this one too.
Oh, actually, you know what? They offered it here. They did. I remember. I didn't want to pay for it. It was like a certain amount of pretty hefty fee they wanted.
Yeah, I mean, depending on how big the unit is. This one, I don't know how big this is. But for example, for an average short-term rental, if you're buying a single-family home on the lake, you're probably spending around $3,000 to $4,000 for that study.
Yeah.
For an engineer to come out. And what is in the tax code, right, is on a rental property, you can, depending on how you classify it, you can either depreciate the value of the structure itself over 27 and a half years or 35 years.
Okay.
Right, on a commercial basis. But with the bonus depreciation that everyone's talking about of how I wrote off my Tesla Model X and yada, yada, you could do the same on a house. And so if you have a hospitality business, say you bought that house in Lake Tahoe for $1 million. And you did a cost segregation. And so they looked at the house and they said, okay, hey, your land is this big, your structure is here, and the walls are worth this much, the sink's worth this much, your shower, your couch, your TVs, you put in the best Sonos sound system.
I like Sonos.
And all of that can get depreciated on year one. And in 2023, you can bonus depreciate up to 80% of whatever they tally up.
Wow.
And in some instances, on our one Joshua Tree Airbnb, we got $80,000 of write-offs in year one.
Wow.
So here's what that means for the viewer is, if I'm going to keep numbers easy, if I made $100,000 at my day job, and now I have this active loss of $80,000, my effective net income is $20,000.
Yep. But in reality, you got this prime real property with all these nice new things inside.
And that is the best hack to write off against your active income is the short-term rental cost segregation tax loophole.
Interesting. How important is a good CPA in regards to what you just described? Because, there's people that know the real estate, they know the rental, but a lot of CPAs or even accountants don't, either know it or don't suggest it to you as a strategy.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
My CPA, I actually now co-host a tax podcast with my CPA.
You're kidding.
I do. He's one of my clients.
Okay.
And he said, hey, can you help me make content and can we do a podcast? But he's not as energetic as me.
Yeah.
And so I said, sure, you're the only one that I will co-host a podcast with.
Okay.
But I also picked him because he also invests himself.
I see. So I guess the point here, guys, is if you're going to pick a CPA or if this is what you're interested in, or it could be something else, in fact, it could be different type of investments, see if your CPA actually does it himself because he's learned some lessons in that journey, right? Okay. So he does it.
So throw it back to you, though.
Yeah.
If you can have your Lake Tahoe house paid for and also have a $200,000 write-off, would you do it?
Absolutely.
All right, cool.
And then at the end of the day, I'd know that I'm replacing what's in there that doesn't feel mine because 100 people used it or 1,000 people used it. Some people are okay with that. You know, they're okay with, hey, I got this couch off Craigslist. It's probably 20 years old. It's gotten some use to it. I'm not that type of guy. You know, every property I've owned, it's been remodeled to my liking, to my taste, to my detail. And it's all thought through with a lot of sleepless kind of nights. But you and I will talk about this, Josh. I was going to say Josh, later because I'm curious. Maybe I'll have to meet your CPA. All right. So we've covered quite a few things here. What are some of the biggest challenges you faced as a real estate investor? And I think we'll need to get into your podcast after because this is interesting and I think people should follow you for sure.
Thank you.
Yep.
The biggest challenges for a real estate investor today, I think, is the shiny object syndrome. So going back to at the very beginning, you said you're all over the place.
Yeah.
And that's the hard part is that today information is so accessible. You have people who randomly done it before will just spew it for free on a platform.
Or haven't done it.
Yeah,
that's even worse. And that's a lot of people.
And so information is so readily available that, I could buy a short-term rental. I could also buy a long-term rental. What if I also did this?
Yeah.
Self-storage. All these different asset classes are so now more available than ever that if you have a little bit of capital, it is hard to pick one. If you don't have a lot of money, I mean, you just have to find ways to get the first initial nest egg to get started.
Understood. So focus maybe on something, make sure it goes well, and then roll that into a potential branch out or stick close to what you're doing initially. Maybe get a 2-unit instead of a 1-unit and keep that kind of going and going. Very good advice. Thank you for that. Do you think your marketing skills helped in any way with any of your rental or real estate